to Lyme Regis Museum. Behind me you can see this beautiful depiction of a watercolour that was painted by Henry de la Beach, and it depicts Lyme Regis as it would have been during the early Jurassic period. Henry de la Beach was a great supporter of Mary Anning, and a lot of the creatures that he painted in this watercolour were based on fossils that Mary had given him. What's fascinating to me as an earth scientist is that this watercolour is basically a Victorian depiction of the movie Jurassic Park. I also love about the interplay between creatures on the land and creatures in the sea. In the museum collections, there are rocks with fossils inside where they don't actually belong. These rocks are limestones that were formed at the bottom of deep Jurassic seas, and the fossils are of plants and animals that once lived on the land. Some of the really extraordinary fossils that have been found in the marine rocks of Lyme Regis have been insects. And this teeny tiny speck of brown here, I don't think you'll believe me when I tell you, but it's actually the fossilised body of a beetle. If I use my lens, I can actually look in closer detail, and it's really quite extraordinary because I can actually see the fossilised legs of the beetle itself. In this specimen of a beetle, what's really quite amazing is that I can see the pincers at the front of the head. If you think of an earwig today, that's pretty much what you can see in this fossilised specimen. And finally, with this specimen, this is a wing of a scorpion fly. It's really quite extraordinary how such a fragile fragment of an insect could have ended up at the bottom of a Jurassic seabed, fossilised for us to see today. The specimen I have in front of me is from a Scalidosaur, and it's really quite extraordinary because these creatures were living on land during the Jurassic period. This particular specimen was found in a piece of limestone just along the beaches of Lyme Regis. So in this specimen of Scalidosaur, we can see several interesting things. At the bottom here are the bones of the neck, and they go all the way to this particular bone here, which is at the base of the skull. We can see this on this model of a Scalidosaur here. At the back here are these strange bony scales. And what's really quite extraordinary is that they're still preserved on the specimen itself. You can see them on the model here. So how did a land-based reptile, a dinosaur, end up at the bottom of a seabed? We have to imagine that our Scalidosaur was probably roaming one of these islands, munching on a juicy piece of vegetation. Perhaps one day he was attacked by a predator, or unfortunately died and fell into a stream. His body would have been washed out to sea and floated for a fair while before sinking to the bottom of the seabed. It's another mystery about how land-based creatures would have ended up in an environment at the bottom of the sea where they're not meant to belong. And it's quite remarkable that we have the fossil evidence here today to show us behind that mystery. It's not just dinosaurs that were found in the Lyme Regis limestones. We actually have fossil evidence of Dimorphodons, which are actually flying reptiles zooming over these islands that were dotted around the Jurassic seas. In this specimen that was found by James Harrison, you can see the beautiful needle-sharp teeth of the Dimorphodon set in the tip of its jaw. These thin, sharp, pointed teeth were especially adapted for Dimorphodon to swoop into the water and hunt fish. It was possible for Henry de la Beach to create this beautiful watercolour, the Duria antiquae, based on the fossils that were being found by fossil collectors at that time, like Mary Anning. Being an earth scientist or a fossil detective is all about solving puzzles and mysteries, and that's why I love it so much. I'd love for you to go away inspired by the beautiful collections at Lyme Regis Museum and find your own pathway to becoming an expert in fossils.